This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Finance for the Town of North Haven for Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. First and foremost, thank you to all the residents who voted yesterday in the townwide budget referendum, which I'm happy to report passed by a vote of 1,661 to 915. So it passed roughly by a 2/3, 1/3 margin with a total of 2,576 people, residents voting. So again, thank you for everyone. We're happy for the turnout. We're going to go through our regular meeting. We're going to cover the annual suspense list, and then at the end of the meeting, we will set the mill rate for the ensuing fiscal year. So why don't we start, if you don't mind, with the minutes for the April 6th meeting. I'd ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain. Thank you.
One abstention. And I guess I erred in welcoming Mr. Frieda back to the board.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be back and great to be with everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Ingrid, could you please talk about the CAFR, please?
Yes.
Which has a new name, I'm sorry, the ACFR, which I'll never
yes.
get that right. I'm going to call it a CAFR anyways, but go right ahead. Thank you.
Our audit's finalized, and we are expecting our auditors to do the presentation on our August meeting, pending their confirmation.
And when do you think it'll be mailed out to the board members?
Next month.
Okay,
By the end of this month, we should have it.
thank you. Okay, why don't we move on to our regular reports. Let's start with the expenditures, and if I can ask Ingrid to just comment on a couple things. One, our current tax collections year-to-date, April versus what they were last year. ECS and ECS, grants for municipal projects, and miscellaneous receipts. Those four things, please.
So we're starting with
We're starting with revenue or
revenue or
expenses.
expenses?
Oh, those are all revenue items.
Yeah, you said expenses.
Yeah.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Revenue, please.
Okay. So our collection rate as of April of last year was 99.40%. Currently is 98.90%. We're, as of our reports, 1.2 million still to be received.
The 98.90 is through today or yesterday?
No, it's through your reports, but through today, May,
Yeah.
it's 99.20, and we have 917,000 to be received. We're expecting $760,000 from supplemental auto, so we should be okay by the end of the year on taxes.
Okay, but not to confuse the numbers. The supplemental
Sure.
auto, you said you're expecting how much?
760,000 of the 917 that we are currently having received.
But that's a different line item. We're already over year-to-date on supplemental, right?
No, that's
Well, it says we've already collected $1.4 million in supplemental versus $1.2 million budget.
let me see. Yes, we're still going to receive 760.
Are you sure?
Yes.
So we'll be at like over 2 million?
Yeah, we'd be around $2 million.
For that line or for the
Yeah.
current tax line?
For the current taxes, we're going to receive 760. No, I'm sorry. 1 second. Yes, we're gonna receive 760,000.
But that's not supplemental auto.
No.
That's for the current tax.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
maybe to
We should be
recap,
okay by the end of the year.
so as of the end of April,
Yes,
our collection rate was 98.6%. At the same time last year was 99.40, so it was 0.8% higher, right? But you're saying as of today, we're at 99.20, right?
yes.
With 917
Left to collect.
left to collect, of which you think we're going to get 760.
Yes,
And that was based on what?
that we get from the state.
No, with the state, these are property taxes I'm talking about.
Current taxes.
Yeah,
So the supplemental auto,
yeah.
we are, there's a part from the state that we receive every year, and we're expecting to receive 765.
Well, let's just stick with property taxes for just a minute,
Sure,
okay? So, as of today, there's 917 uncollected for the January 1 billing, right?
yes,
Okay. And I'm guessing it's hard to predict how much of that we're going to collect, but we at least close the gap from the 1.5 million, right?
yes.
Okay. So now, since you had good news, I'm just confused by the good news, to be honest with you. We're going to get 760 in supplemental auto?
Yes, last year, we received that, like, in August, it's part of like our 60-day collection.
Okay, so you think that's going to be in the window period?
Yes,
But wouldn't we apply that to, because we obviously already made our budget for this year, right? We're not going to apply that to next year?
we will apply it to this year. That is part of the 917,000 that we haven't collected.
Because that's where I'm sort of confused, right?
Okay.
Because I'm trying to separate the property taxes, right, from, and I mean real estate property taxes,
Yes.
right? From the rest here. So on our budget line here, right, page 1, right? The first one is current taxes. Those are property and personal. There's some, obviously some car taxes there, but it's not supplemental, right?
Right, this is supplemental auto tax that we're going to receive.
Okay, so you got 760 coming in somewhere between July 1 and August 30th.
Yes, out of the 917 that we haven't collected.
Well, but the 917's not supplemental auto.
Nope.
That's just regular taxes that we haven't collected. That's what I understood, though,
Okay,
right?
yes. So out of that, we're gonna be short in collections.
All right, if at some point you can send a clarification
Sure.
email to us,
Mhm.
that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm likewise confused, but I'm sure there's an explanation for it, so just, you can send it to us when,
By the end of the year, sure.
yeah, thank you.
All right, can you go on to ECS, please, Ingrid?
ECS, we received an extra 135,000 from the state.
So I believe that was the part the state announced earlier. I think originally we were, not budget, but the estimate was we would get a little bit less than 100, but I'm glad to see we got a little bit more. We got 135.
Yes, we should receive grants for municipal projects by the end of June as well.
And just on miscellaneous, please?
And miscellaneous, there was another blight settlement that we received this month.
So there was a house, it's not on Hartford Turnpike, it's on a side street, right, Mike?
Yeah, it was 83,000.
Yeah, we got 83 according to Richie, yeah. It had been an issue for a while. The house sold, and we collected 83,000.
So Tim, can I make a statement here?
Please, go ahead, yeah.
So when we look at these numbers, you see what the deficit looks like after, if you look at the April numbers here, which we have, okay, we have 60 days from April 30th to try to make this number up, which we probably won't, but our estimation, our calculation is because of the unders of expenditures, we're looking to break even this year.
Yes.
That's the game plan right now for us right here, so.
Not to reconfuse things, but the supplemental auto is the overage that we're getting because we're capped on the mill rate. That's what we're getting.
That's what we're getting.
That's what we're
Okay,
getting.
right. Okay, I got it now.
All right,
I got
that's
it.
different than
Yeah.
the traditional supplemental.
Yes, which is what was confusing, I'm sure all of us, right?
Taxes, which is, occurs when
Right,
there's an auto change.
right, okay. Members, any questions or comments on the revenues?
Yeah, grants for municipal projects?
We should receive that by June.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question about, up at the top under cash surplus, the, the special revenue fund transfer of 500,000. So is that from the police or?
Police aside.
Exclusively
Yes.
from police? Wow.
Yes.
Okay. And is there an expectation that we will be making the transfer from unappropriated cash surplus, also 500,000, or it's a wait and see?
If we make that transfer, we will have a deficit of 500,000. So we are trying to break even by not receiving that.
Let me try and answer that question differently.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, I think the answer, Nancy, is we don't have to transfer that right away. We're going to see how the year shakes out. If necessary, we would transfer whatever amount we needed to break even. But obviously, if we run a break even or slight surplus without it, then it would remain where it is in the general fund.
Yeah, and that would be transferred from the general fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the same way it was handled last year.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah.
again, always worth checking, it's unclear. And interest in short-term investments, again, we had another banner month of $120,000, and we are now at, looks to be about 1.6 million, even though we budgeted 850, so an excess of $765,000, which is fantastic. So that goes a long way in terms of not only compensating for other revenue shortfalls, but any other over expenditures.
That's right. We are 1.6 million behind on our town revenue departments.
Yeah. In particular, building fees, fire fees, and paramedic services continue to lag. The application inspection, again, it's only $500, but is that something that we routinely include in the budget? I'm not even sure exactly what that refers to.
I'm sorry, Nancy. Oh,
Sorry,
applications?
In the very
Oh.
last section under
Yeah.
town revenue departments, I just happened to notice the 0%, so I'm
It's
not
like
even
the
sure what
fourth or
this
fifth in the
refers to.
bottom there.
Yeah, I see
Yeah,
it.
exactly, I wasn't sure what he even referred to.
I'll have to look into that.
Okay, those are the only questions I have.
Any other questions, comments on the revenues? Okay, why don't we go on to the expense side? My only comments here, but I did look the report over. Virtually every single department on this month's expenses are less than 83%, which is where they should be given this point of the year. There was one or two departments that were a little bit over, but those are generally low dollar. Oh, sorry, one more thing. I did ask Ingrid because I think someone on the board asked about the capital expenditures last month and asked for a listing of the expenditures. Ingrid has confirmed that we've expended the 854 and it was expended on all the items that we were budgeted for this current year, excuse me.
Yes.
Tim, I have to ask about the insurance payments for this month.
Page 17.
On page 17, is there a reason why they weren't included?
Because as I explained last month, there was a 2-month contribution,
Yeah,
so we didn't make this month to make
This
it
month,
the
okay.
82.
okay. Thank you. Yeah, well, I forgot, what month was that, that 2-month contribution? Was that the beginning? of the year?
Previous month,
The previous month.
yes.
Thank you.
Any of the members have other comments or questions on the expenditures? right, why don't we move on to the Board of Ed reports?
Just one quick question.
Yeah.
Community services on page 15. It seems as though it's running at about 87%. I suspect that's due to, I'm not exactly sure what it's due to, other than perhaps consultants and dues and expenses, but is that something we're expecting to kind of level out in the last 2 months?
Yes.
Tim, I just have one on the overtime thing on page 3 for, under the building department. Did we just not budget enough money for that line?
No, this was due to a consultant that resigned, and we had to cover it with overtime. So that consultant line, you should see in under budget is at 61.6% in page 4.
And one other question regarding the annual special audit, which starts on 5 and spills over into 6. Again, this is at 129%. Is that all in, all done for the year? or-
That should be all done for the year,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, I think we discussed that last month.
Well, I wasn't sure, given the fact that the CAFR wasn't done.
Yes.
Whether this was something that was still building.
It's done now.
Anything else on the expenses? Why don't we move on to the Board of Ed report?
I
I'm sure.
have a comment on.
Yes,
Board
please
of
go
Ed.
ahead.
Yes.
Yep.
Even though that it says that the reports were not provided by the Board of Finance, that's because the Board of Ed had their meeting on May 1st. But you'll see that he did indeed included the special fund reports in the back
Yes.
for you guys. He did not report it to his board, but he did send them to you.
Thanks, Ingrid. I'm sure all of us read our usual letter from Patrick. He once again points out that special ed transportation and tuition is running quite a bit over. And while they are expecting, the Board of Ed, some dollars to come in, it's likely that that account is going to run over budget. And they're also running over on their professional and technical services, to a lesser extent on electric. Comments or questions on the Board of Ed reports?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just again, stepping back, they're emphasizing the budgetary freeze, and I certainly appreciate being very cautious towards the end of the fiscal year, and I think they should be able to make up some ground just with some savings. But when I look at this particular budget report, which again, this is through the month of April, with just 2 months left in the year, as Tim mentioned, that's 10 divided by 12 is about 83.3%, and their budget report, including $3.6 million in encumbrances, is at 82.3%. So they're actually slightly under target, which is great, and again, that includes the encumbrance. If you were to take out the encumbrance, they would be at about 76.7%. I did a quick calculation since they don't show monthly amounts as we do on the town side. Through the month of March, they were at about $47.8 million spent, and through the end of April, they're at about $52.7 million. So the difference being about $4.9 million, okay? So with 2 months left in the year, if you multiply 4.9 million times 2 months, that's about $9.8 million. Now, they have remaining in the budget about $11.3 million. So, again, not including any unexpected expenses at the end of the year, also without any real understanding of how they pay teachers during the summer months, that looks to be about a $1.5 million surplus. So, most importantly, it seems like they have a little bit of a cushion, so I'm very glad to see that, and I am happy to see that they're making some headway in terms of working with Ingrid and the rest of the finance department in terms of providing us with additional information. I did have one question, having attended the last Board of Education meeting. I was just wondering, when will the Board of Finance actually be provided with an update on this project that I know Patrick and the board members are working on, which is this $40 million project to upgrade the 4 elementary schools? And again, it sounds like it will be over a 10-year period, but I also feel like this is something that the Board of Finance really should be provided with regular updates about this. So Ingrid, have you heard about this at all, or?
I have not. I will
Okay.
follow up.
If you wouldn't mind, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Other members have questions or comments on the Board of Ed reports?
Tim,
Michael?
does the Board of Ed receive our feedback from our previous, meetings that we had? Like, everything that we said in the last meeting about this medical and dental reserve analysis report for the self-insurance for the education side? Is the same incomplete fields and I think to some extent misleading numbers that we received last month? It's the same, only it's 1 month further in time.
I'm going to respond to that, having spoke to Ingrid earlier today, and then let her fill in. I think it's likely that some of these reserve reports need some adjustment. For instance, on the medical dental workers' comp, Ingrid told me today that the $447,000, which is the due from the general fund, was actually already included in the $3,194,000, correct?
Yes, it has
Correct.
already been cleared.
So I haven't dug into it, Mike. You may be onto something.
Well, I just wanted to know if there was any response from them at all, an explanation of, I asked for a completed report. I asked for a report that would clarify the questions that we had. That leaves us not knowing whether they're running $1 million deficit or $1.6 million deficit.
My understanding is that the Board of Ed successfully closed out their books and records for the fiscal '24 year, and that they currently need to work on their monthly closings for fiscal '25. And they are getting the assistance of the Town Finance Department, including Ingrid and others, to do that. I don't know whether or not, Mike, that affects these reports, but I think it's safe to say that if you haven't, if your accounts and books and records aren't closed anything beyond June 30th of last year, it's hard for me to say whether or not these reports are 100% accurate.
This report, is this created by the Board of Ed or is this created by Brown and Brown?
That is created by the Board of Ed.
Board of Ed. Well, Brown and Brown gave us, last month, we received from the Finance Department a report by Brown and Brown on the town side, which listed everything, all the individual expenses, and it laid out the spreadsheet in such a way that it was very clear and comprehensive. Now, if they have that for the town side, do they automatically always keep that spreadsheet up to date for the education department?
Brown and Brown?
Yes.
Yes, they could request it.
Could that be sent to us by email?
I can relay the message to the Board of Ed.
Ingrid, they create the report, right? But some of the information comes from the town. And
Yes, they
and
get
then-
our reports from the
So, I
town.
mean, for instance, the balances and stuff, right? We maintain the actual accounts in terms of the reserve accounts, right? And then I'm assuming the Board of Ed does the inputs that we see here, the various line items, right?
Yes,
So it's sort of a combination, right? Brown & Brown prepares a report, but they're getting information from the town and the Board of Ed, right, to do that, right?
right. Brown & Brown reports on expenditures, and we have the fund in our books in the town.
Right,
So
okay.
we have the revenue as well.
Okay,
And we do give them monthly reports.
okay, thank you. Mr. Halloran, anything further?
No, it's the same as last month, though. I couldn't vote to approve the reports last month, and I'm not going to do it again.
As is your right.
Well, it's just a protest vote.
Other members, any comments, questions on the Board of Ed? If not, I'll take a motion to move the reports.
Make a motion.
Second, please.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I oppose. Any abstentions? Thank you. All right, let's go on to item number 4, which is the tax collector suspense list. I think most of the members are aware what this is. Stacy, by the way, who normally does the presentation, was unable to make it this evening. So, to put this in accounting parlance, this is basically bad debt write-offs. Okay, these are receivables that have been on the books beyond a certain period of time, and for accounting purposes, we basically write them off. That doesn't necessarily mean that we've exhausted our legal or collection efforts on these. Some of them obviously are so small that it doesn't really bear the resources. I did put in a call to Rich, and again, unfortunately, Stacy's out today, but he will ask her tomorrow. I think if you looked at the report, you might have noticed that the largest by far here is Vein Clinics of America, which has something between $100,000 and $150,000 of write-offs on this report. So it is listed as out of business. It was over on Universal Drive.
Would that have been equipment?
I don't know, Bob, unfortunately, and there may be some code in here which tells you, but I mean, I'm assuming this is all personal property. It was probably a rent over there, right? I don't think it's real estate.
No, that was a rental.
That was a rent?
Right, it's probably, so it probably was all equipment, right? So I did ask Rich to circle back with Stacy tomorrow and just give us an update. I mean, I'm not sure if the company's bankrupt, I'm not sure if it was a franchise, if it was a corporate-owned location, but maybe Ingrid, if you talk to Rich, you could remind him tomorrow and just circulate either to me or the full board of what the status is in that, if we are pursuing further collection.
So that would be classified as a franchise. They're part of they're a tenant in a national real estate firm who we work closely with here, so. But Tim makes a good point. That's the largest out of all of this, so. But let's see what we can come up with on that. I think it's important.
I'd certainly take any comments or questions on the suspense list. I'm not sure I can help further, but maybe Mike or Ingrid could if there's any questions or comments.
Do we turn these over to a collection agency or a? Because I noticed that, there's some names in here of local business people.
Yeah, there's one in here, Broadway Collisions.
Saw that, yeah.
So that's another big one. So we probably should, and we'll work with Stacy on this because she's not here, as Tim said, we should assemble like the top 10 or the top 5 and see if there's an approach where there's a collection agency and find out what we can do on this. Because as Tim mentioned, even though they're suspended now, money could come in that go back into the general fund. So that would be important for us, I think, to stay on top of this.
They can be collected up to 15 years.
Yes.
So, why don't we do this, Ingrid? It could be the top 10, but having just sort of skimmed the list, I'm guessing the top 5 is enough, because a lot of these dollars are small. So why don't you ask her to just give us a couple of comments, bullet comments, if you will, on what the potential collection is on the top 5 accounts here. Have we pursued them? Are we certain that there's no chance? Are we in active litigation? Wherever she may be. Further questions, comments on the suspense list?
Would we have to engage an outside collection agency, or could we simply use our town attorney?
Well, I doubt that collections are covered under a normal contract, Mike?
No,
Yeah.
no.
All right, in any event, take a motion on the suspense list, please.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Okay. Let's move on to the, I guess, the second to last item on our agenda, which is the budget. As I reported earlier, the budget did pass by 2/3 to 1/3 majority. Our role now is to set the mill rate for the ensuing fiscal year. It was in the budget books that were presented at the last two town meetings. The mill rate would fall from 34.64 down to 29.46. What I'd like to do is make a motion, have a second, and then any conversation would be after that, if that would be all right with the members. So I'll take a motion to accept the, I'll take a motion to set the mill rate, at 29.46 mils for the fiscal year 2026.
Make a motion.
Second, please.
Second.
Discussion.
I think that next year we should just keep an eye on the collection rate to determine whether, in fact, this mill rate is sufficient enough to receive what revenue we estimate we could get.
Meaning you think the collection rate's too high, is that what you're saying?
Well, we adjusted it.
By a quarter last year.
Yeah, higher.
Yeah, we did.
And I don't want to say it's in flux with economic times, but just being off a quarter of 1% is a fair amount of money. So
It's about $1 million. $1.1 million, in fact.
Yeah. So I would just keep an eye on it, and let's see what happens this year. That's all. Just advice not to automatically carbon copy what we previously estimated.
Good advice. I think what's happened over time is that we've experienced strong collection rates in the town, and this has been tweaked up before, and we've moved up a little bit over time, but still good advice, Mike. Other comments from the members on the mill rate?
Again, just so the people understand that this mill rate happens to be lower than the current mill rate of 34.64, and it does represent the net effect or combined effect of both the revaluation process as well as, which of course lowers the mill rate, as well as the approved budget that was just approved at the referendum yesterday, which of course raises the mill rate. So it went down and then went back up, and we landed at 29.46.
Thank you, Nancy. All those in favor of setting the mill rate at 29.46 mils for the fiscal year 2026, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Thank you to the town. Thank you to the department heads for the work they put into the budget. With that, we have some members here who would like to participate in public comment, I'm sure, so.
If you wouldn't mind, before
Yeah.
we did public comment, I actually
Sure.
had some comments that I'd like to make about
Please, go ahead.
This budget process for this year, as well as the referendum results. And I agree with Tim's assessment in terms of the numbers. But I think the 65-35 split really doesn't tell the whole story about the 2025 budget referendum. That there was about a 14% voter turnout, which means that more than 85% of those who could have voted yesterday did not. But I think it's worth pointing out that the same number of people voted no this year, almost 1,000, as voted yes in the second referendum last year. That was the one that actually passed. And while the passing of the 25-26 budget referendum makes our Board of Finance work this evening a lot easier, because we didn't have to go back to the drawing board, I do believe that it will make our work, as well as the livelihood of some of our citizens, potentially much more difficult in the future. So I believe that this budget was approved for two reasons, and I'd like to address them separately. First is the input, and the second is the influence on the outcome. So first, the input. So I was very disappointed after our last Board of Finance meeting in April, and I firmly believe that this Board of Finance did not do its duty at that meeting, and we did not work to the best of our abilities to provide the best budget. And what I mean by that is providing the town with the needed services at the lowest possible cost. And the proof that I have of this claim is the fact that Chairman Donahue acknowledged at that meeting that several of my suggested budget changes were meritorious, but he was not willing to make any of those changes at that time. And as the meeting progressed, it became clear to me that Tim's agenda was to avoid reducing the budget by any amount of money. It was fine to increase it by $12,000, but don't make any cuts before May. And I believe, personally, that the public deserves the very best budget the first time, not the second time or the third time or the fifth time. I believe that the Board of Finance majority party gave the public two undesirable options in the referendum ballot. They represented the wicked dilemma of altruism and self-preservation. On the one hand, people could support the community with a vote of yes to a very large budget increase with no new services that exacerbated the impact of the revaluation process. On the other hand, some individuals felt the need to make the fiscally responsible choice with a vote of no, given their personal finances, knowing that it might result in significant community sacrifices. Now, I stood outside the polls for several hours yesterday, and I never told anyone how to vote, but I listened very carefully to their comments and noted several sources of influence. So let me comment on some of those influences. First,
Can we before we go on to that's your second topic, right?
Sure.
So I just pulled out, although I sort of remembered. The sum total of your cuts that you suggested last time were nearly identical, different items, admittedly, than to the ones that were proposed by the majority members of the board. And your cuts included $1 million cut to the Board of Ed.
No, I beg to differ, Tim. Last month, I actually made additional recommendations that were trims to the budget. If you recall, in the previous month, in March, you refused to entertain any changes to the revenue side of the budget. So last month, we did discuss it.
Well, let's make sure we
But we
understand
didn't.
what we're talking. Are we talking about when we did the decrements or not? What period are we talking about?
So we were not able in March to talk about any changes to the revenue side of the budget. In April, we at least were able to entertain some discussions about it. I can't say that we deliberated on it, but no changes were made to either the expenditures or the revenue side of the budget. So therefore, in essence, the mill rate did not change as a result of the April meeting.
So I happened to check the budget and where we are year to date versus today. So the components that are in question, I guess, haven't really changed for this board the entire year, right? I mean, some of them were just discussed. We're we're quite a bit ahead on short-term interest. We're
Yes.
running behind quite a bit on things like fire fees, paramedic fees, and I'm missing one here. So, building office, sorry. Without going through my math, if you look at where we are year-to-date on those categories and you annualize them, then we're way short on building fees, fire and paramedic fees, and town clerk fees. If you do the same with the short-term interest, we're running quite a bit ahead. But at the end of the day, those two numbers, the sum of those numbers, cancel each other out. And the only sort of wild card is the fact that we're running ahead on miscellaneous. And the only reason for that is that we're fortunate to collect the $83,000 on the property that we mentioned earlier, which won't reoccur next year. So having looked at this, frankly, just today, I don't believe, had you brought it up earlier, that I would recommend any changes, because to me, if you look at the ones that are most significant, they would net each other out anyways.
So if you'll recall, I went through several changes to the fund balance, a transfer from the fund balance, increase in interest and liens, increases in short-term investments, register of vital statistics, community services fees, and then on the expenditure side, yes, I made some changes to a wide variety of things that I think could have also just trimmed the budget. Because again, I was very fearful at that point that Mike Frieda had said he thought that budget had a 50-50 chance of being passed. And I thought if we made trims in April, that we could actually increase the chances of the budget being passed in May. And that's not what happened. So this board, the majority of this board was willing to roll the dice with 50-50 odds, with a very significant downside to the budget actually being defeated. So that's why I worked very hard to actually come to that meeting prepared to make suggestions and really work not just to make changes for the sake of making changes, but to make changes to actually salvage the budget and pass it at the referendum, so we did not have to come back and make tremendous changes at this May meeting. So that was my motivation. And, but I was met with, nope, those are all great ideas, Nancy, but we'll only come back to them if the budget is defeated in May.
Well, Nancy, people have disagreements all the time. Okay, the fact that you happen to have a different opinion than perhaps myself or the other members of the board, I mean, that's a natural dynamic of any board, right? I mean, you know, I'm sure the other boards and commissions in town, members have different opinions. And the way these things work is eventually the majority rules, right? So I'm not saying that you didn't have a difference of opinion, okay? I obviously have a difference. I just told you what my opinion was on the revenue side. So I'm not sure if you're saying that we had a difference of opinion. We did.
We had a difference of opinion, and there was no discussion about certain topics, such as the Board of Ed budget. That was a taboo subject. $4.5 million is what...
We talked about it. If it was taboo that we didn't cut it, maybe that's what you're trying to say.
No, it was taboo as to whether we could even consider making a small reduction to the Board of Education budget.
Maybe my English isn't good, but taboo to means something you don't talk about. I know you had another topic you want to talk about.
Yes, if I could please continue. Okay, so I talked about the input from this Board of Finance. The second topic I want to talk about was the influences. So there were several sources of influence on our voters. The first that I noticed in speaking with people at the outside the recreation center was the checkbook influence. I spoke with many of those almost 1,000 people who were resolved to vote no at the referendum. A large fraction were longtime North Haven residents. They had done their homework. They recalculated their taxes with the new assessment value, and many of them said enough is enough. We've had 2 years of mill rate increases. A third year is unacceptable. Then there was a second category of people who voted yes. And I feel that that group actually fell into 3 subcategories of being influenced. The first subcategory were the many people in this town who are very faithful to Mike Frieda and dutifully supported what they considered to be his budget. And I think that is a testament to his leadership. The second cohort is those whose yes vote was determined not by detailed budget knowledge, but rather by guiding principles. Their philosophies support education, public safety, and service, and those individuals also have the financial means to cast a yes vote without any concern for their own personal finance consequences. And then the third group is a very large cohort of voters who I believe were very strongly influenced to vote yes by what I believe to be unethical, if not illegal, practices initiated or authorized by elected officials,
All right,
town
I'm going to
employees.
stop you right there. Please stop, okay?
I'm not done.
I know you're not done.
Okay.
I'm asking you to stop anyways, okay? Because I know where you're going with this, and I think you're way off base, and you're getting a little accusatory here, okay, with what you're about to say.
Okay.
So you can finish if you want,
I would.
okay? But, well, go right ahead.
Thank you. So some of these practices were initiated or authorized by elected officials, town employees, political groups, as well as not-for-profit groups. There were the scare tactics that we all heard about. And 2 examples are the Board of Education listed 60 untenured teachers that they believe could have been targeted for layoffs if the budget failed.
Well, as far as I understand it, and this was mentioned by Mr. Strickland at our last meeting, okay, that's a legal process, may not be the right term, but it's a process that's required by their contracts.
Was their contract suddenly updated in the last year to reflect that? Because they didn't do it last year or the last 15 years.
And that was your question, I know, at the town
Right.
meeting, okay?
And if you
but-
do the math,
But having
60 people.
But having once been married to a teacher,
Mhm.
she's gotten similar notices over her career.
Sure.
Yes.
So if you take 60 people and let's say they make an average of $50,000 apiece, that's $3 million. The Board of Education is not going to experience a $3 million cut. So having that list, I thought was a bit overkill. Secondly, I also pointed out at a Board of Education meeting recently that the high school principal canceling the this coming summer's summer school program due to budgetary concerns, I thought was entirely inappropriate because the budget hadn't even been voted on at the referendum. How could there be budget concerns? And that budget, or, I'm sorry, that summer school program is actually included in the budget. So it's paid for now, and now they've canceled it. I believe that there was also some false information that was spread. For example, the threat of canceling concerts on the green if the budget fails.
I don't think that was a threat, okay?
Well-
Mike talked about what might happen if the budget doesn't fail. That was one of the things that was mentioned, okay? People naturally ask questions, and or if they don't, they need to know the ramifications of what might happen if the budget doesn't pass, right? And yes, that happened to be one of the things that Mike mentioned might occur. So it's not a threat that we're canceling them. It's the reality that if we have to find $2.5 million, for instance, it's got to come from somewhere. And maybe the concerts on the green get cut back from, I'm sorry, I don't know the number, from 12 to 10 or 8. That's just what happens.
So if you walk around and you go over to the rec center and over by the pool, you will see that the schedules for the concerts on the greens are not just printed, they're posted. The band contracts are signed, and the sponsored donations are set. So if we were to cancel any of those those events at this point, I believe that we would be subjecting ourselves to a lawsuit from each and every one of those bands. So that's why I think it's unlikely. And most, if not all, of these costs are actually absorbed by the sponsors. Yes, there are some costs associated with hiring police officers and some part-time public works individuals, but I think that those costs are relatively minor.
Having spoken to Mr. Monaco on this particular topic, not
Yes.
necessarily in relation to the budget discussion, my understanding, and I'm sure Mike is going to fill in where I may misstate this, that the town had been absorbing more of the cost of the concert on the green. And I think Mr. Monaco last year solicited some additional contributions to help defray the cost.
That's great. Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, our
I'm glad he did.
Our incremental expenditures range from $35,000 to $53,000 a year beyond the sponsors that generate the money. So,
Okay.
and one last point before we turn back to Tim and Nancy. So I learned a valuable lesson 14, 15 years ago when we didn't let people know in advance that we were going to reduce and eliminate leaf pickup. So when we failed that budget, we took that out. I had 4,000 people, emails, phone calls, seeing me in the streets. How come you didn't tell us? So the lesson I learned back then was at least tell the people what possibly could happen, to have a transparent discussion with people by not divulging what could happen. I think it's a lack of transparency, because I learned that valuable lesson I never forgot 14 or 15 years ago. How come you didn't tell us?
And it was put back, right?
And it was put back, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and the last, the last source of influence that I wanted to point out was the use of printed material on town property used to influence votes. And there's two different examples, and these are both violations of Connecticut General Statute 9-369B. So town employees posted printed signs in town buildings, both in the library and the rec center, informing captive audiences to vote yes, or the following services may, or in some cases they wrote will be cut. And I believe this is a clear and egregious violation, and these signs were immediately taken down when the town attorney was notified. Personally, I thought it was made worse by Mr. Monaco's admission that he actually gave the approval for this, because I think that it's really not in his purview as one department head to give permission to another department head to do something like that, because none of those signs were actually posted here in Town Hall. So he must have recognized there was something that, you know, might have been raised some eyebrows if they were posted here. And then the last example of this is, I have to say, having been involved as a PTA member, a room parent, one of the founders of the Team for Education, I'm all for parent-teacher associations organizing a Get Out the Vote campaign. I think it's fantastic. But what I witnessed yesterday was the strong-arming of novice voters who succumbed to social pressures to vote yes, and specifically using children to make and hold signs on the town green that said, for every yes vote from a parent, your child will get a free popsicle. I think that that crosses an ethical line, at least with me. I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm hoping that this is disturbing to everyone. And once again, the printed signs in the schools, on school property, on the town green, with the North Haven school logo, advertising the popsicle party as the incentive to vote yes in the referendum, is just another violation of this general statute. So
Well,
I would love to be able to say today, in response to the referendum vote, the people have spoken. But in this particular case, I think that the reality is that the popsicles have spoken.
Well,
So-
I don't want to get involved in a long conversation about popsicle, but maybe Laura Jean, as a former registrar, would like to say something.
What they did on the green was more than 75 feet apart from where the election was being held. Having a sign out there, whether it said yes, no, maybe, whatever, is no different than anyone holding a public sign for someone running for office. And again, they were more than 75 feet away. And the registrars in this building here had no notice that that was even going to happen. So it was just something the PTA decided to do. And honestly, maybe we didn't like it, maybe you don't like it, but you know what? You lost, Nancy, and that's what
No,
you don't like about it.
I did not lose. I did not
So we did the
personally
best we
lose.
could.
And you
as
did not
members of-
personally
Could I
win,
have a
Lori
minute,
Jean.
please?
Yes.
You take all the time, all the time. So it's about time you listen to
You
other
are
people.
more than welcome to speak, Lori
Well,
Jean.
then be quiet, please. Can you do that? Anyway, as a former registrar, again, more than 75 feet apart, you can have any sign you want when it comes to an election. That's all I have to say.
Then you weren't listening to what I said. My objection was not just having a sign, it is the illegal use of printed material, not only on town property, but also in town buildings. These signs were posted inside the buildings of the schools, and there was a very clear expectation.
That was definitely wrong. That should not have been held in the buildings.
Yes, I'm
But
aware.
on the green, they're 75 feet away, and that's no different than somebody from any political party standing out in front of the rec center more than 75 feet apart, and that's town property too. So they did nothing wrong by being on the green. It's just that they had a message that you didn't want to hear. But the other flyer that we have seen tonight, some of us had an opportunity to see it, nowhere did it say on the flyer, vote yes. It said, if you vote, come and get a popsicle. We had nothing to do with that. We don't know who funded that, who did that, but they didn't do anything wrong by offering something. They got people out to
They
vote.
very specifically said, if you vote yes.
Enough,
So that
yes.
is not get out and vote. That's if you vote yes, your child will get a popsicle. That is clearly influencing the vote.
Maybe we could hear from the chairman of the Board of Ed since he's in the building.
No, that's not.
That's not.
Oh, sorry.
Can I call a point of order? I'm trying to find relevance to Board of Finance.
Get up.
Yes?
Stand up.
You need to come to the mic, sir.
Can he call a point of order if he's not on the board?
We sure can.
Yes.
Sure, of course you can.
Yeah. Hi, Mike Nappy, Skip Street. We're going off on a tangent here that has nothing to do with the actual mill rate setting and so forth and so on. It's a whining fest.
Oh,
And
absolutely not.
and I have the floor, thank you. So I'm calling a point of order to say, is this relevant to discussion on finance matters right now, or can this be put into an article in the paper somewhere later on, or press conference, or whatever the hell he wants to do with it?
I think, Mr. Nappy, my answer is that we've granted leeway to the members in the past to make their comments and make their statements. I think we're veering a little bit away from the work we had at hand this evening, so, and Nancy, you have an opinion, you're obviously entitled to the opinion. It doesn't really affect what we're doing. In fact, the official business of this meeting is actually over, outside the public comment. So maybe I would just ask this, do you have anything further to say?
I just have one more sentence to make.
I'm gonna
Thank you,
say-
Mr. Nappy.
Thank you, Mr. Nappy. And yes, I do believe that my comments are relevant to the chairman's initial comments about the referendum in discussing not only the numbers, but the fact that it was a 2/3 to 1/3 split. And that is why I thought it was important to discuss not only the influences on the input to this referendum, but also the influences on the voting. So my final comment is simply that I sincerely hope that the North Haven community, the Frieda administration, and this Board of Finance can cope with the results of this referendum. And I look forward to addressing many of the issues in this town that need to be addressed in addition to the budget in order to avoid being in this situation next year and avoid being over-reliant on the taxpayers. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Public comment. Sally, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive. I
I have two areas that I'd like to discuss. The first one is the referendum yesterday, and secondly, some ideas that I have moving forward that we might want to think about. Just on the referendum yesterday, I was there at 6 a.m. I stood there about 10 and a half hours. You saw me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I did. And I saw Nancy, by the way, as well.
Yeah, and I was there 10 and a half hours, and thank people for coming to vote. That's all I said, and a lot of people did engage in conversation with me at times. Every hour, I would go into the polling location and ask for the vote count. And it was running pretty normally early in the day. By 2 o'clock, by 3 o'clock, which was the last time I checked, it was at 1,200. And I thought that was maybe 150, 200 ahead of schedule from last year's June referendum, which passed with about 1,650 voting. So about 1,200 had voted by 3 o'clock. As we know, 2,576 voted, so over 1,300 voted the last few hours. First thing I want to say is I want to thank all of the people who came out to vote. Myself, Mr. Frieda, for years we've been advocating, please come out to vote. We have had some referendums in recent years, not too long ago, where 600, 700 people showed up. We have not had 2,500, I don't think, in at least 20 years. One thing that it did do, the sudden surge, the popsicle surge, did inside, was it really created a traffic jam like I have never seen. And I felt very badly for the registrars. I spoke with them. They approached me. They only had one checker for District 3, which had a sudden influx of a great number of people. The checker is that person at the table who's flipping through all the streets trying to find your exact number, your address, and then underlining it with a ruler. Imagine having, all of a sudden 150 people standing in front of you for that district. So that was a big problem for the registrars. And then after you checked in, the line to wait for the tabulator, which we had brand new tabulators, just was snaked around the entire perimeter of the building, and then even inside, and then snaking through wherever it could. It was really unbelievable. And the line to be checked was not only out of the gym in the foyer, but through the two sets of doors and outside almost to the curb. It was really unbelievable. So if these kinds of incentive programs, which I think that it was called a popsicle party, are to be planned in the future, we may have to seriously think about going back to 5 voting locations for our referendums, because the parking was a problem. It was unsafe. There were a whole bunch of children holding signs right by the edge of the road, by the green. People were circling, trying to find parking. People had to walk long distances to get there. The polling location was overwhelmed. As far as the whole popsicle issue, voting is a sacred thing for Americans, I think, and that's why we have the 75-foot marker. We don't allow someone within 75 feet of the door of a polling place to be bothered at all. And that's how high we hold our right to vote. And I have to say, I thought that the sanctity of the vote took a little bit of a hit yesterday. I have photos in my phone, Mr. Chairman, I could show you where.
You don't have to, my
it-
son
it
sent me one.
says-
My son sent me a photo,
Yeah.
they're over on the green, Sally.
Yeah, I know, but it
The
said.
75 isn't even the question, they were a block and a half
Yeah, it
away.
said- But it said, vote yes, and you get a free popsicle. If it said, come and vote, I think it's great that the PTA, it was a fantastic marketing idea, have free popsicles. But it didn't say, come and vote. It said, vote yes, and so that crossed the line a little bit.
So did you call the registrars?
The registrar spoke with me.
Okay,
I
and what
did
did they
not
say?
call the registrar.
What did they say?
They had deep concerns about it.
So what did they do?
Nothing.
Because they thought it was okay, they didn't think it was
Yeah.
okay, what did they think?
But what I'm saying, I'm just giving my opinion. I think that any effort to get people to vote is great. Believe me, I think that the 2,500 is a great number. I hope that those people continue to come out in numbers. I just didn't like the signs that said, vote yes and get a free popsicle. If it said, come and vote, I just thought it kind of put a negative spin on the whole sanctity of voting. That's my only point.
Listen,
I'm not saying
I hear you. I'm
it's
not sure I buy it,
illegal.
but I say to myself, okay, let's say I'm gonna go vote. I'm gonna vote yes. Or let's say I was gonna vote no, right? I walk up and I say, hey, if I vote yes, I can get my kid a popsicle. I'm not sure that's enough to change my vote, or anyone's vote, by the way. I hear you, okay, but it's hard for me to believe that someone who was committed to voting no would vote yes because they thought their child was gonna get a popsicle.
I didn't say that. I said people came there to get the popsicle and voted yes to get the popsicle. That's, as I said, there were 1,200 voted at 3 o'clock. The other 1,376 voted during the 4 to 6 popsicle party timeframe. It had a.
Which, as we know, is a, I mean, look, there's a couple surges in voting, we all know that.
Yeah.
Early in the
Yeah.
morning and after work,
Right.
right?
After work doesn't more than double the.
I don't know whether it does or doesn't, I just
It
know there's a lot of
doesn't.
people coming
I've
here.
studied but, look, I just hope that those folks who came and voted will continue to come and vote. I think the fact that the PTA came up with a great idea to get people to come and vote is fantastic. They have every right to do that. I just didn't like the signs that said, vote yes. It just went over a little bit, in my opinion. If they said, just come out and vote, that's fine. It was the fact that the sign said, vote yeah. There was a sign on the truck giving out the popsicles, right on the truck. It said, vote yes. But anyway, to me, the sanctity of the vote took a little bit of a hit with that extra jump.
Maybe. You
I
and I
think-
talked,
I think-
yesterday, and you said to me, in a friendly manner, that's all, that you thought the turnout would be, I thought you said 7%, right? And I said, do I think it'd be double digits, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong, right? It was a, you know, a situation where people's taxes are gonna go up, and when people's pocketbooks get affected, they turn out in greater numbers, right? We all know that if we had zero tax increase, we'd have record low turnout, because nobody wouldn't bother, right? So maybe it was something outside, maybe it was actually just the issues, and that people decided they needed to have the vote be counted.
Right, well, certainly the popsicle party swayed a lot more people to show up. And it was a big problem for the registrars with timing. Some people waited in line 45 minutes, and I gave them credit for doing so, because that's how long it took to vote if you went between, after 4 o'clock. But a couple of people came up to me. I was standing there, still not sure what was going on, and wasn't aware of the popsicle party yet, and said, what are we voting for? And I said, this is the budget referendum. But what is it? I said, every year we have a budget referendum. I thought that was just a little odd. But it was great that so many people voted. I hope those numbers continue. I just want to make it very clear that I thought that the vote yes just put it over the line a little bit and kind of dulled the sanctity of the vote, in my opinion. The other sad thing was I saw a few kids, little kids, walking down from the green on Lindsley Street crying because they didn't get a popsicle. They ran out. So if you're going to offer popsicles to sway people to come to vote, you better have enough, because there were some very, very upset kids who did not get their free popsicles after their parents waited in line for parents waited in line for 45 minutes and didn't get their popsicle. So I was very sad to see some of the crying that they didn't get a popsicle. So if you're going to use this type of tactic to sway people to come and vote, make sure you get enough popsicles. Anyway, some thoughts. This is the most important thing I really wanted to say, is some thoughts moving forward. My first area moving forward is health insurance. This current year, we had a 26%, in the 24-25, which is the current fiscal year, we're still in it, we had a 26% increase of our health insurance for our employees on the town side. And this current budget, 25-26, another double digit at 11%. And we cracked the 10 million mark. Our line for this health insurance is now at 10.2 million. I fully supported the first selectman with his decision. The years go by so quickly. Was it 7 or 8 years ago for self-insurance?
Yes.
And I fully supported that decision because it was worth a try, because of how things were increasing at that time. So I want to make that clear, that I'm not saying it was a bad idea. I fully supported Mr. Frieda's initiative. But talking with some other finance folks, people I know, in recent months, I've learned that many towns who tried the self-insurance experiment have gone back to the more standard coverage model. Because as you know, with the self-insured, we do have to get that nasty stopgap coverage as well, which is absolutely a must. So I think that we should start looking into, considering going back to standard coverage and perhaps having different plans. For example, some towns have their firefighters covered by a special firefighter plan that's available, the IAFF, I'm not sure, it must be international, something, insurance for firefighters. A lot of towns have their public works people covered by a Teamsters health insurance plan. And then there is the state partnership plan that many towns are using that has worked out quite well. So I think that there are other fully insured options out there, and it might be time to think about and study leaving the self-insured model, because it's just increasing double-digit every year. So that's one issue that I think we could think about going forward.
Would you like me to comment on that?
Sure,
So
I would love it.
We're already doing that.
You are? Okay, well,
we're
the first time hearing it,
We're
but,
starting it with general liability insurance. We're moving to a model that would include no longer self-insured on workman's compensation. I've been on the board of directors at KERMA as former president of CCM. I've been talking to them for years. We see workman's comp that's ticked up dramatically. So we're already in discussions with KERMA about flipping the model back either to a hybrid model, which is a combination of self-insured but protecting the reserves, or moving it over to total workman's compensation. We haven't gotten yet to health insurance yet because we're still monitoring that. We think that there's going to be claims that are going away that we have to watch closely before we make that decision. But if you look at the 3 insurance models, general liability, workman's comp, general liability number 1, workman's comp number 2, health insurance number 3. We've already started the first 2, and we will evaluate the 3rd.
And if we do,
We're self-insured in general liability?
no,
We were, yes, we were. We changed that.
We did change it.
Yes, we changed it.
That's
That's
what I-
number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, we're in conversations, deep conversations, and we actually have a plan to convert to a fully insured model that's not town-sponsored. It'd be through KERMA.
Okay.
So-
that may mean, though, and Mike could correct me if I'm wrong, that the first year is going to be more expensive than you'd expect, because you're going to be paying the premiums on that current year, and you're going to be you're going to be paying the tail on the claims from prior years.
And that's exactly the case.
Right.
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 That, I'm glad you mentioned that, because
Right.
that's part of our review.
Well, that's, I have a lot of friends out there, and they're saying you're crazy to still be self-insured. And I'm just going by the increases that I've seen the last 2 years, 26% and 11%. I mean, that line is jumping not hundreds of thousands, but over 1 million a year. And so I'm glad to hear that you are thinking of it.
I don't think the market is that deep in Connecticut for health insurers either, Sally. And again, Mike probably knows, but I think there's only a very small group that actually do in Connecticut.
That's exactly right. Let me comment
What about
on-
the state partnership plan that I've been hearing so much about?
Yeah, so I'm on that board. The governor appointed me to that board with Sean Scanlon, so I'm on that board. But that is a state partnership board that is defined as MERS, M-E-R-S, and it's MERS 2. So Comptroller Scanlon, along with the governor, along with the commission members I sit on, we just got off a meeting with them last week. It doesn't have to be collectively bargained, but there's a migration to offering options for different municipalities and different departments within those municipalities. What we don't know yet, it's a little bit hazy as to whether it's mandated or it's collective bargain that's got to have to drive that. So we just can't go in and make changes. And also, with regards to health insurance, I spent a lot of time on these financial issues in town, along now with Rich Monaco. We have to be very careful. We can't change plan designs. That has to be collectively bargained. In other words, we can't just go in and change plan designs. If we went to a fully insured model and we decided to change the plan, we can't do that. Before I took office, somebody tried to do that. There were grievances. The cost of grievances were almost as much as the insurance itself. So all that has to be carefully calibrated and calculated. So we just can't go in and do it. But to come back to your point about the plan at the state level, it's not just municipalities, it's housing authorities, it's a lot of different entities, and it's a slow migration into offering options for those to make a decision. That's where we're at.
Okay, well, again, just, I'm glad that it's already being considered. I was not aware. Sometimes I'm the last to know, which is fine.
We don't go broadcasting things, folks. We have a lot of things behind the scenes that
Yeah.
we're doing.
Yeah.
We don't just go out and say, here's what we're doing, here's what we're thinking, right? We have to carefully analyze all this before we come to a conclusion. When we come to a conclusion, we then present it.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with me saying,
No, I'm just
as a
responding.
suggestion, we might want to continue re-examining our health insurance model, because the self-insured way to go is less and less popular from what I've been hearing and learning about. I also think there was some talk tonight about the revenue budget. I also think that as part of our budget formulation process, we have a lot of workshops, of course, required by charter for our expenditure budget, where we have to hear from all of the town departments. the whole budget process really, well, it starts with the original department head requests. I believe they come in sometime in December. And then the whole workshop process starts in early January with the Board of Selectmen workshop. And there's just the expenditure portion. And then we get a draft budget for the January and February Board of Finance meetings. Again, this is just on the town side, of course, only expenditure. I don't see anything about revenue until it shows up in the book that is presented at the March Board of Finance meeting, which is just a few weeks before the public hearing. So I would like to see some form of a revenue budget workshop where we have a discussion prior to that March meeting, because that's the meeting in which by we, I mean this board, at that March meeting, you guys set the budget that's going to be recommended at the budget public hearing in early April. And of course, that has to have the revenue budget in it. I would like to see some sort of revenue budget workshop, because when a budget fails at referendum, it's not always just expenses that help get that mill rate down. It's also the revenue. So we focus so much on the expenditure side, and people focus so much on what will be cut if the budget fails. The revenue doesn't get the attention I think that it deserves. So I would like to see some sort of Board of Finance budget workshop where finance department staff could present what they think the revenue budget should be, rather than just have one thrown at the Board of Finance at that March meeting. That's just a suggestion, a procedural suggestion in the budget formulation process. I would like just one night or one meeting devoted to the revenue side. I also think that we have to take a look at our public safety model a lot closer. For example, we've heard discussion a lot from the fire department that which currently has 10, they have 4 shifts. There's 10 firefighters on 2 of the shifts, 11 on 2, for a total of 42. And that we have to get that up to 14 to 17 firefighters. So even if you go to just 14, that would mean hiring 14 firefighters. To get to 14 per shift, we'd have to hire a lot more firefighters. You'd have to have 4 more on the 10, 8 more for the 2 10 shifts, and 3 more each for the other 2 shifts. And hiring 14 to 16 firefighters does not seem affordable. But there are a lot of people that have concerns about public safety, as we heard at the budget public hearing. So I think that it's time that we have some discussion similar to what Mr. Frieda suggested at our Board of Selectmen budget workshop in January, which was not an executive session, where he initiated a discussion of a weighted day duty, which is something that was originally discussed in 2018 by myself. And that was also the year in which Mr. Frieda commissioned a special work study group who, after 7 months of studying the fire department, came up with many suggestions, one of which was a weighted day duty aspect to the model, which means Monday through Friday from 8 to 4 or whatever shift you put, you have extra guys on that shift. Of course, that was not popular with fire department administration, who said, no, you know, bad things could happen at any time. But so that, when you made that suggestion at the workshop, I just felt it was time maybe for Mr. Frieda to commission another work study group. It might be in order, because we do need to take a hard look at our public safety models. Finally, well, on the legislative side, I think we as a municipality have to put some pressure on our state representatives to promote an idea that was promoted many years ago about a local sales tax. We are a fairly small town at 24,250 people, but we have some large retail. Our Universal Drive is a huge retail area, and it is very draining for us, in our public safety personnel, fire calls, police calls. But it's generating a lot of money for the state with the sales tax. And there was this discussion years ago about prorating back some of that sales tax revenue, you might recall this, to the municipalities where it was generated. And I would love to see that kind of initiative brought back to the legislative table, because as a small town, we spend a lot of money on our large retail areas. And I think if you look at page 6 of the new budget, you will see that the burden on the taxpayer increased from $111 million to $121 million, 10.2 million to be exact. The budget only went up 9 million. So, but as we all know, the reval shifted a greater burden to our homeowners, and our taxpayers are paying a huge portion of a greater portion of our budget than ever before. So I started thinking about what else could we do with revenue sources, and I remembered this idea. I was looking at some old notes from years ago, and I saw notes where we had discussed this sales tax. Are you on any commission for that? I would really love to see some sort of initiative that would help us as a municipality spending so much money.
Well, what we've done is as you know, I'm president of COST, and
Yep.
still on the executive committee at CCM. Our focus has been on to reduce the property tax burden at the municipal level in terms of education expenses. We've focused in, and I was actually with the governor last week on this, with a group of other mayors, is to increase education funding to reduce the burden on municipalities at the BOE level. So in terms of the strategy you just mentioned, that got shot down.
I know.
And it got shot down quickly, actually. So, I mean, can it be resurrected? Yeah, possibly. I think that's it's a good strategy, but there seems to be so many other priorities at the state level in terms of increasing municipal aid, and largely this past year has been how to increase special education and how to increase more education at the municipal level.
Right.
So-
Well, a lot of good ideas in history have had a hard time getting started.
Yeah.
There's just, again, I stare at that page 6 because that tells so much of the story of our burden on our taxpayers. If there's anything that could be done to help with non-tax revenue sources, that's where I was thinking. And one final thing, Mr. Nappy is here. He made a suggestion at the budget town meeting in May about having more tax installments. And we talked about, there are a few, very few, but a few, municipalities that break it down by 4. So instead of being due in July and January like us and most everybody else, it's July, October, January, and April. And, you know, I thought his idea had merit, and of course, we all recall the town clerk saying, well, wait a minute, I'd have to redo my budget because of the costs associated with doing that four times a year rather than twice a year. But I gave it some more thought, and I also wanted to ask you, Mr. Chairman, besides the expenditure concerns that the tax clerk had, or the tax collector had, do you see any negative impact that it might have on one of our very important non-tax revenue sources, which is the short-term revenue line? Because if we get money in 4 installments rather than 2, what impact might that have on one of our lines, non-tax revenue lines that's been performing remarkably well? I think we have to think about the impact that 4 installments might have on that line as well. So I thought that his suggestion had merit, which is what I said at the meeting, but I think it is something that would take a long time to discuss. I suggested to him that he bring it up sometime in September or October when the fiscal year is still new and you guys aren't burdened with the budget process yet. But I just wanted you to know that I'm also concerned about its impact on that revenue line. What do you think, Mr. Chairman?
I don't know, Sally. I think it's a little bit wider issue. We'd have to look at it. I mean, I'd want to talk to the finance department not only about that. I mean, you know, I guess the difference in theory is you're getting a big lump in July 1, right? And then that tapers down versus getting a smaller lump that tapers down that gets reloaded at the beginning of month 4. But truthfully, when you mention it, and maybe when Mr. Nappy mentioned it, you know, I'd want to look at, okay, what's the flow of our expenditures here?
That's
and,
what I
and
was.
Are they,
yes.
And are they more front-loaded? Bond payments typically, by the way, tend to be July 1 and January 1. The other thing would be is that, you know, we have other taxes, car taxes, and sewer use fees that we collect during the year, and what the timing of that would be as you put, let's say, 4 property bills on the calendar alongside those other 2. So I don't have good answers for it. I'm just trying to think of the other variables that might go into that answer.
Yeah, well, I think, like I said, at that night, when the tax collector mentioned its impact on her budget, you know, Mr. Nappy ultimately removed his motion. But the more I think about it, the more I think it would have far greater implications that we really need to look closely at. So I'm a little more concerned about it. Again, I acknowledge that it had merit, but the more I thought about it, the more I am concerned about changing to that. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, not seeing any. I will accept the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.